What's interesting is that when Kim Kardashian was interviewed about her pending divorce of Kanye West, she said something that I think that people my age and younger would definitely want to co-sign. But there's one giant problem with what she said that no one seems to be talking about. So let's get into it. In a recent interview of Vogue magazine, Kim Kardashian said that ever since she's entered into her 40s are now all about being team me. And also in the article, she said, "For so long, I did what made other people happy, and I think that in the last 2 years, I decided I'm going to make myself happy, and that feels really good. And even if that created changes and caused my divorce, I think it's important to be honest with yourself about what really makes you happy. I've chosen myself, and I think it's okay to choose you." Now, if you're a millennial or younger, what she said probably resonates with you on some level. Our first instinctive reaction when we hear that might be something like what Charlemagne said after he heard her statement.
I've chosen myself. I think it's okay to choose you.
Always.
Our instant reaction is probably something like, well, good for her. She's putting herself first and doing what makes her happy. That's a good thing. But putting ourselves and our happiness first is so commonsensical to how we think about life today that most of us have never even stopped to wonder why we believe that doing so is a good thing in the first place.
Why not?
The fact is, today our culture promotes the idea that we should do what makes ourselves happy by putting ourselves and our desires first, and that no one else can tell us how we should live our lives.
Don't tell me how to live my life.
We see it as the solution to our problems, and we think that this idea is just an obvious fact to all cultures and all times. But in reality, virtually every other culture that's lived before us and virtually every non-Western culture today tends to believe the opposite. Other cultures promote the idea that self-assertion is actually the problem in the world, not the solution. They would say that we should instead sacrifice what we want to do for the sake of the family and the greater community. So self-assertion and self-esteem are often seen as a bad thing. It's only today in our culture that we see it the other way around. We believe not only that putting ourselves first is a good thing, but also that life's ultimately is about achieving individual and personal happiness.
At the end of the day, life is about being happy.
So when Kim says that she's putting herself first and making herself happy, at some level, we all want to agree that she's making a good decision, especially after seeing the way that Kanye has been acting lately. But on the other hand, the outcome of the put yourself first view is something that we would all take issue with when it's lived out consistently, even for Kim.
That energy in my life.
For example, take Kanye's wild behavior lately that Kim isn't happy with. Now, I'm not trying to get into the drama, I'm not getting into the details, but how Kim described her new mindset seems to be the same mindset that Kanye had during their marriage, which resulted in Kim wanting a divorce. In Kanye's Thanksgiving prayer, Kanye gave a list of all of these different things that he did that led to his broken marriage, and behind just about every single thing that he mentioned, it was a direct result of him putting himself first rather than prioritizing his wife and his kids above his personal happiness and self-expression.
But that screaming did not help me keep my family together.
Kanye putting himself first and did the things that made him the most happy, which ultimately played a major role in his family falling apart. And it seems that Kim thinks it's clear that Kanye choosing himself was the issue in their marriage and not the solution.
It's like he goes and moves to a different state every year. I have to be like together so I can raise the kids, you know?
And now, according to Kim, for the last 2 years, she's chosen to put herself first, and she said that she did so even if it caused her divorce. So, like Kanye, she also chose to put herself and her personal happiness above her marriage and above any desire to keep her family together. Now, of course, I don't know all of the details about their marriage. To be honest, I don't even want to know, and that's not even the point of this video. Only God knows the stuff that they went through over the span of their marriage. But what I do know is they're probably like the rest of us who went into marriage with the idea that the goal of marriage is to make us happier and that the other person is supposed to add to our personal happiness.
It's my responsibility to make me happy, and it's her responsibility to make her happy, and then we're going to come together and build on that happiness.
If they stop making us happy, or we feel that they're taking away too much happiness from us, then we believe that we're justified in leaving the marriage and finding someone else that will make us happier. But the more that I've talked to people whose marriages have fallen apart, and the more I've actually thought about the conflicts and the issues that I've had in my own marriage, the more that I see self-assertion as the root of all of the major issues. Almost every time, one or both of the people involved decided that their personal happiness is more important than the commitments that they made to each other on their wedding day.
I didn't come this far just to come this far and not be happy.
It's no longer for better or for worse, but instead it's only for better. I've come to realize that prioritizing our personal happiness is not only the thing that leads to the most conflict in marriage, but ironically, it's also the thing that makes us the most miserable, even though we're told that it will make us more happy. If you dig deep enough, you'll see that at the center of the conflicts, there's almost always a foundation of self-absorption and people putting themselves and what they want over what's best for others. We're told that the self-absorption is supposed to make us happy, but in reality, it actually gives you the wrong path towards lasting happiness. Sociologists and psychologists have long pointed out that people who are the happiest tend to have a sense of meaning and a sense of being valuable that usually comes from living an unselfish life in service to others. When it comes to me personally, I've come to realize that the more I'm focused on how I feel, if I'm doing a good enough job, how my wife is treating me, if I'm getting enough in return, or even if I'm dwelling on my own insecurities, the more I'm focused in on myself and the less happy that I am. It wasn't until I started thinking about and learning more about Christian marriage that I found the idea to be so strange and yet so freeing at the same time. Here's why. I thought about what it means when the Bible teaches that marriage is supposed to be a reflection of how Christ loved us. I thought about the fact that Christ came to earth as a servant. He didn't come to be served, but to self-sacrificially serve others for their benefit, not his own. He didn't come to earth and see it as an opportunity to see what he could get from us, but instead, he came to give us everlasting life, even at the expense of his own life. When I thought about that, I thought about how the Christian view of marriage is not about what I can get or how the other person can make me happier or make my life better. But instead, I realized that it's about loving each other. And by loving each other, that means self-sacrificially serving one another in radical ways. Imagine what it would look like if Jesus had the same mindset that we have today when it comes to marriage. If he did, he'd probably be saying, sorry guys, I've decided to put me and my happiness first. Ain't no way I'm gonna go to that cross for you. I've chosen myself and that's okay. If Jesus had that mindset, then he would be cutting off the possibility of us having a loving relationship with him. But praise God, he didn't. He put his personal happiness aside for us. And so when we think about Jesus, it's not just the self-sacrifice that he showed, it's also the commitment that he made for us that he would never leave us and he would stay with us through thick and thin, for better or for worse. No one can take us out of his hand. And even when we're disloyal to him, when we treat him poorly, or we hurt him by how we live and how we treat others, he refuses to leave us or forsake us because of the promises that he made to us. I thought about how our marriage commitment should be a reflection of this. Once I realized this, I realized that the idea of marriage in Christianity is a commitment that's stronger than our feelings and also about self-sacrifice for the sake of the other person. Now think about these two radically different views of marriage. On the one hand, we have a marriage where both people have a goal of personal happiness with the expectation that their spouse is supposed to add rather than take away from their happiness.
And then we're going to come together and build on that happiness.
Not only is this a ton of pressure, but at the end of the day, both people are essentially saying, me first, my needs before yours and before our marriage. And compare that to this other view of marriage where the goal is motivated by the life of Jesus. The goal is for both people to instead show mutual self-sacrifice for the sake of the other person. In a marriage like that, it's inevitable that there will be more peace, less conflict, better character development, and more of the happiness that comes from self-giving and helping. But at the end of the day, I get it. I completely understand the idea that we need to put ourselves first and make ourselves happy. I thought that way for most of my adult life, so I understand why people hold on to that view and why they accept it without even thinking about it. I guess I just see it differently now. Now I operate off of the idea that I'm not married in order to make myself happy or to put myself first. I'm married to honor my wife and kids by honoring my commitment in the times when things get the hardest. So when I hear Kim saying that she chose to put herself first, even if it calls for divorce, and when I see Kanye acting in ways that seem to imply that he believes the same thing, I hurt for her and for Kanye, and I especially hurt for their 4 children. Statistics have consistently shown that kids tend to have far better futures, far better mental health, social development, and have less issues in life overall when they're raised in a home with both biological parents present. This makes me think that when we hit those inevitable times in our marriages where we want to give up on our marriage because we're not happy, we need to also think about our kids' happiness and that our marriage is far more than a means to personal happiness. Instead, it's a commitment to our spouse and our children to make them, and ultimately the world, better. Now, of course, not everyone agrees with the values that Christian marriage has to offer, like Will and Jada Smith, for example. Will claims that he and Jada actually have a more loving marriage since they're allowed to sleep with other people. But is that really the case? Well, I'll talk about that in this video, so go ahead and click here to get my thoughts on it. But the next time you find yourself choosing to put yourself first without considering the impact that it has on others, what are you going to say?
What do you mean?